Hello there, my name is Steph Samargia and I am about to make a video called How to Argue Against Lockdowns. It is the end of the year 2024, the events we are talking about happened 4 years ago and I guess that now we can have a reasonable discussion about those things. So, step number one, admit that not all public health policies are bad. For some public health problems, it's obvious what the government should do, like the problem of superbacteria. Around 70% of antibiotics these days are being used in the egg industry, and it's obvious that what the government should do is to regulate the hell out of the egg industry. It's just the problem of pandemic that's currently going on is not one of those problems. Step number two. Use the arguments that question the basic premise of lockdowns, namely that lockdowns make people stay home. Because most people, when arguing against lockdowns, are using the arguments such as comparing Florida to California or Germany to Sweden and are pointing out the fact that states with wildly different pandemic policies had about the same proportion of people dying from COVID. In my opinion, such arguments are unlikely to be convincing because pro-lockdown people tend to have responses ready for such arguments. But most of them have no response ready for our arguments such as the following. If lockdowns make people stay home, how it is that the number of deaths from traffic accidents increased in 2020 compared to 2019 rather than decreased? Or, if lockdowns make people stay home, how it is that in 2020 many mobile phone networks got overloaded rather than landline phone networks? To those arguments, one cannot respond by saying, well, it's basic common sense that lockdowns work if one accepts the germ theory. Step number three. Now, some people do have a response ready for the argument that the number of people who died in car accidents increased in 2020. They will claim that there were fewer cars on the roads and that the drivers were speeding because they were lulled into a false sense of safety. In that case, I think the best response is explaining what the logical fallacy called ad hoc hypothesis is and how they are committing that logical fallacy. In my opinion, that is enough to make most lockdown proponents shut up. Now, let's talk about the things that you shouldn't do when arguing against lockdowns. So, step number four, don't claim that lockdowns are the primary reason for the mental health crisis, because that's not supported by evidence. You know which country had the highest increase in suicide rates in 2020? It's Japan. Japan had no lockdown. If I had to guess what's actually causing the mental health crisis, I'd say it's the media. But I cannot advise you about that as I didn't manage to conserve my mental health during the pandemic. In late 2021, I got a psychotic attack and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. I think that you should be telling yourself, 100 years ago you could have caught the Spanish flu, which killed people indiscriminately, both young and old. You could have caught smallpox, a disease which makes COVID look like common cold. If the fear of catching COVID is your biggest problem, you are, compared to most of the people in human history, very lucky. And step number five, don't use nonsense phrases such as herd immunity or laptop class. Herd immunity against COVID is impossible because herd immunity is only possible if there is sterilizing immunity. Sterilizing immunity means that immune people can spread the virus. That's not true for COVID, for vaccine-induced immunity, and is even less true for natural immunity. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but that's how it is. Anyway, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.